All right, now Professor in the Department of Political Sciences at the University of South Africa, Professor Dirk Kotze, joins us for analysis on that Lekgotla of the ANC in Gauteng. Good evening, Professor. Thank you very much for joining us on the program. Now, the Provincial Task Team's Lekgotla has concluded. Robust discussions were had, at least according to the co-convener, Panyaza Lesufi. And this was, of course, to put together a program of action that will assist them to claw back the lost support, essentially calling this a plan that must be centered on going back to basics. Your assessment of that PTT's Lekgotla?
Yes, I think this is something which has been very urgent for Gauteng and the ANC in Gauteng, especially after they have now the national leadership have dissolved the provincial executive and formed this provincial task team of about 67, 68 members. So it's a very huge team that is supposed now to lead the province, and with two co-conveners. The one is the current premier, and the other one is a former mayor of Johannesburg, Amos Masondo. Mm-hmm. And I think this is was the opportunity for them to bring back or bring together all the different components, the different elements within the ANC in Gauteng in order to develop a form of consensus or a common approach, especially to the in preparation for next year's local government election.
Mm-hmm. Now, when we hear them say they want to return or go back to basics, are the basics what is required at this point? Given the economy where it is, are the basics what is required, or the basics have honestly been what was needed, but what had happened that saw them lose a lot of support was because they veered off course and now they want to return to the basics? Can the basics ensure that they claw back the support they've lost?
Well, this is the big test. And I think what we've seen is that they have, actually since 2014, the ANC in Gauteng has lost significant support. So it's not that it happened last year. Last year was an important component of it, but they in 2014 already lost 11% of their support. Mm-hmm. So in a sense, this is a part of a trend that developed now in the past 10 years. And for a party, any party, anywhere in the world actually, to be able to turn this around against the trend of last year, as well as against the trend of what they have indicated themselves. And that is the opinion polls, that the internal opinion polls that they've also discussed at this event. Then it is a massive task for them. And I think what is also interesting to see is that amongst the two co-conveners, they have sort of different approaches to the current situation. Mr. Lesufi is much more enthusiastic, it's much more positive, while Mr. Masondo is more reserved about what the potential is. For example, he claims that they are at the moment experiencing an existential crisis in order to survive as a political party in Gauteng. Mm-hmm. So I think these are all elements that will be taken into account. It's the fact that it is such a huge leadership, I think on the one hand has its advantages, but it's also exceptionally difficult to manage such a big group in order to have a very effective team. Mm-hmm. So this is going to be, well, very much the same as in KwaZulu-Natal, but it's going to be the real acid test for the ANC, whether they can turn around what has happened, especially with last year's election.
But in your view, should they return to the basics? Because again, when you say let's return to the basics, it presupposes that the basic plan was the master plan to ensure that they are relevant in today's kind of economy, in today's society. Was it the master plan, and should they continue to do what they've consistently wanted to do?
Well, on the one hand, they identified the problems as what Mr. Lesufi referred to as the 13+1 problems in the province. And it is mainly about service delivery problems. But what he does not really address is that the party itself, in terms of its credibility and the trust that the party has amongst the population in the province, had also experienced problems. And this is about not only about service delivery, which is possibly the most important, but also about problems with corruption, problems that, especially at local government level. Remember that Gauteng is to a large extent a combination of the three metros. It doesn't have so much agricultural or rural areas. So it's very much of what's happening at local government level that also determines what is happening at provincial level. And at local government level, all the metros have experienced serious problems with infrastructure as well as service delivery. So if that is what they regard as the basics, and if they can turn that around, well, then they do have a chance, but they do it within coalitions. So the question will be, who are going to receive the credit for the turnaround, the ANC or the other parties who are part of the coalition?
Now, in his address, Panyaza Lesufi said they were firm also on factional politics and wanting them, or at least wanting to address those and the tendencies that have paralyzed the party. But when you look at factionalism, it's born essentially out of uncontrollable ambition to lead. And many politicians are ambitious. They want to progress. They want to group themselves closer to any leadership contest so that they themselves can become leaders. So can a party truly rid itself of factions, or better, should a party preoccupy with itself with dealing with factions? Because it's not a phenomena that's unique to the ANC. All parties have factions. So should it actually occupy an inordinate amount of time for them as a political party to rid themselves of factions that will never go away for as long as there are humans and humans have ambitions?
Yes, to some extent that is correct. And as you say, it is in all political parties. The question is how intense and how divisive are these factions? To what extent do they become the main focus or the main platforms from which the different members in the ANC launch themselves? And I think the fact that they refer to it, they refer, for example, to the fact that of the regional conferences and the high risk that some of these factions will hijack these regional conferences, means that it's a confession from within, that they see it as a major challenge to the Gauteng leadership of the ANC. So I think by saying it and emphasizing it so much and warning so much against it is by implication saying it's a real serious problem within the ANC in Gauteng. To turn that around and to rid them of that, to get away from this, is something which you don't do in 1 year or a number of months. And that is, they've given themselves 12 months now in order to turn everything around and to win back the trust of the population within Gauteng. If it is that factionism is in the end the main issue, then it is a very important, very difficult task for them in order to be able to unify around this. And I think part of what we have seen is that this huge task team, provincial or presidential task team, is indicative of the fact that there are so many different interests in the province, and they must all be accommodated in such a team. And I think this is, again, part of the problem is that the party has become so diverse in terms of interest that it's very difficult to integrate that.
Professor, thank you very much for your insights this evening. That's Professor Dirk Kotze from the University of South Africa.